issues. I'm pleased to present our panelists this evening. We have with us Dr. Cecilia Roger. She is a licensed counseling psychologist and she's the director of psychological services, the Psychological Services Center at St. George's University. I'm also pleased to present ASP Glenn Charles. He's the officer in charge of the Southern Policing District, and he will be dissecting a very important issue. We're looking at mental illness. It's a national dilemma as far as we're concerned. And we're also crossing to Jamaica. We know now that these issues, they cross international borders and boundaries, and I am pleased to present out of Jamaica this evening Sashina White. She's a licensed associate counseling psychologist, and Sashina, it's great to have you crossing borders and coming into the studios of GBN virtually to join us for this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Great. Dr. Roger, how are you? How have you been?
I'm pretty good, thank you.
Well, I mean, I would expect no better from somebody holding that title that you hold, as well as Sashina. You'll be in good spirits, you know, to manage mental health. ASP Charles, how have you been? I'm certain that it's been tough for the police in recent years, the last 2 years especially, and especially in recent times that we're emerging from lockdown.
Yes, I'm good by the grace of God, and yes, it has been tough times for us, but we have been rising to the occasion, and we continue to do so.
Great. We have some questions for the police. It's been a while that people want to hear some explanations from the police on how they handle mental illness and people who display signs of being mentally challenged. So we're glad that you've been brave enough to come and answer the questions that the public have been asking. So we'll be posing them to you. Let's start with Dr. Roger. When I was growing up, I heard about crazy people, and we dismiss people as, she crazy, she's a crazy woman. But now we're hearing a lot about mental illness and the importance of shining a spotlight on mental health, especially. Talk to us about that.
Well, mental health is necessary to thrive in your life. I mean, when we talk about mental health, we're talking about the ability to navigate life in a way that's everyday life. No, mental illness is when you have difficulty doing that, and you have different types of illnesses. But everyone, mental health is part of who we are as human beings. If you're a corpse, then you don't have to worry about that. But as a human being, you have your emotional life, your psychological life, all aspects of life that is being touched by your mental health. If you have mental health, then physical health would probably go with that as well, oftentimes. But sometimes you're physically ill, when you go to the doctor, nothing is wrong with you. It's because your mental health may be at risk. So you want to have good mental health in a physically healthy body.
Okay, so
it correlates, you know?
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, Charles, I'm coming to you, but let me just cross to Jamaica. Sashina, your take on this whole issue of mental health, mental illness, and the need to address it here and now.
Okay, thank you very much. Mental health is, as I like to define it, it is really the condition of your mind, so beautifully put by Cecilia. Now, if we're looking at mental health as the condition of our mind, then it automatically pulls us into the focus that our mind is something that we all have, and it is something that we ought to fiercely protect, as I like to say. It is our most valuable asset. But I've recognized that historically speaking, and once we've been growing up and coming through the different time and space, what we find is that there is a lack of emphasis on the value of the mind, the importance of the mind, and the interworkings of the mind, which automatically spills over into, how it is that we treat with our mental health. We tend to pay attention to physical health, to sexual health, but not so much to mental health because of the stigma that is being attached to it or has been attached to it. Nowadays, it's almost as though because of the different things that are happening, the different factors and the pandemic and all these things, that individuals are now forced to pay attention to the effects of these things on our mental health and our mind, the condition of our mind.
Great laying the platform there, especially looking at what has been happening in the world with COVID-19. ASP Charles, I'm coming to you to ask, what is the police's perspective on mental health? We know that you try to keep law and order, make sure that the traffic flows freely, but now apparently you are being forced to sit up and take note of mental health because you have to interact with people who are mentally challenged. How's that position within the police force?
Well, issues of mental health for the RGPF is dealt with like how we will deal with any other complaint in terms of receiving the complaint and responding to the complaint, right? So we treat it with the same sense of urgency. We give it the same level of importance, right? Because one of our main goals is to ensure that persons are safe and also communities are safe. And so we respond to calls of mental illness throughout our policing districts.
But ASP Charles, I could hear somebody saying, when we call the police just say, except he don't chop somebody or she somebody, we don't come in.
Well, you were going to find that coming from persons throughout the country, but this is basically not so. From the position where I sit, I could tell you that we deal with calls of mental illness almost on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. And sometimes the amount of calls that we attend to is overwhelming. And the level of importance that we have to give to it and the level of attention is really overwhelming. And so then the amount of time that we have to spend in dealing with those cases is really overwhelming. Yeah. I'm not saying that there may be one or two instances where the police may not have responded, but I'm saying for majority of cases, from where I sit, I know that police respond to those calls.
But what is the protocol? If somebody calls and says, there's this man in the back of Bao and he have a cutlass and he's threatening people in the community, what is the protocol? What do you do?
First of all, we receive the information, we get the location and so on, and then we allow officers to respond to the reports, right? Sometimes when people call to make reports, they don't give the information, and that is okay. That is okay. We wouldn't not take a report because somebody withheld the information. But if people don't give the information, then we can provide feedback. Because feedback is a very important part in dealing with reports. So we attend to the reports. Sometimes you may find the person, sometimes you may not find the person. If the person is found, generally they're taken into custody, taken to the general hospital for medical examination, and thereafter, if the doctor so finds, the person is then taken to the institution at Monge.
I could hear some people questioning the validity of the expedition. There was a case in my village 3 months ago where this guy was carrying on up and down the road and he go this somebody and he go this somebody and he go the other somebody. And villagers said they called the police. The police did not come. By 12:10, he stabbed a pregnant woman in her stomach like 6 times.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that every instance the police would respond. But based on the mandate of the RGPF, mental health reports have to be treated like any other report in terms of its importance and the response that the police give.
Okay.
And what we would advise persons, if you call once and the police didn't show up, call back again. Because the police ought to show up to deal with those reports.
Okay, got you. You want to dissect anything that ASP Charles has outlined?
As ASP Charles was speaking, what I was thinking about is if I'm seeing a client, we would let the person know that what happens in therapy stays here, except if you tell me you're going to hurt someone or you're going to hurt yourself, or if a child is in danger. So that means that you would have to report it so that you could get help for the person. So I would think that if someone calls and says there is someone threatening the lives of other people, then that would be taken as a report that someone is
Yes.
Okay. So Sheena, I see you nodding there. You wanted to chime in on this element of the conversation?
Yes, I'm really agreeing with Doc in this argument. When we take on a client and before we execute therapy, we always make it clear that what is said within the context of therapy is going to be held in the strictest level of confidence, of course, except in cases where you are threatening harm. Now, either the harm is to self or others. Now, it is very important to have a working relationship with all institutions within a cultural setting or within a society, so that it is understood that the factors that lead to crime and violence, or the potential crime that might be committed, is not just from a legal standpoint, but also from a mental health standpoint. So if somebody is saying, okay, look, based on my thought process, based on my feelings, based on my emotions, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I'm projecting to do, then of course the police and the individuals within the social security aspect of life, should really be ready to jump on it as quickly as possible.
Dr. Roger, now that we realize how serious an issue this is, to each and every citizen out there joining this national conversation this evening, what do you want to say to them in terms of the importance of taking care of your individual mental health?
Well, it's very important, and sometimes people think that I have to have a serious problem to, whether it is to see a therapist or to take care of myself. But daily, if we can start, it's almost like preventative. If you can start daily taking control of, even if it is your emotion, going for a walk, taking a moment to pause, then it's likely that I'll start developing the skills to be able to manage my emotions. But if you're waiting until someone reaches the point of, if you want to say, no return, then of course we would be at a disadvantage, because really, even the World Health Organization, they have identified like mental health would be a real burden on countries. By 2030, depression would be about the #1 illness in countries. So we have to be attentive to that. So people know that you have like a supportive network. I know there is there's a stigma, of course, so people don't want to talk about it. But one of the things I find funny, before I even went into studying to be a psychologist, people would meet me on the road and tell me their business. And then when I become a psychologist, they say, I'm not going to therapy, I'm not crazy, but you just told me your business on the street a couple of years ago. So, and again, it's because of the stigma, because people think you have to be crazy to see someone. But you don't have to be crazy, when they refer to that, I suppose they're talking about things like a psychotic break or schizophrenia or one of those really serious mental illness. But from very young, even to help your child, when you get up in the morning, take a couple deep breaths, pay attention to your breath, just be calm for a moment. How are you feeling today? We don't ask people how they feel. We think it's not, especially for the men, it's not macho. I don't talk about how I feel, but we feel, or we dissociate from how we feel because it's too much for us. But if we get into the habit of paying attention to people, really listening to them, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Take a moment, take a breath, go for a walk, then we would be able to help people from the very get-go to take care of their mental health, because that's an important part of our lives.
So, yes, Pichas, I'm putting you on the spot because I heard you chuckle a little when she said men look as though they don't feel. Do men feel?
Of course men have feelings. But, based on the society, men always tend to keep their feelings to themselves. But one of the biggest issues, I think, with mental health or mental illness is a lack of family support. Right? If people support one another in that family unit, a lot of persons could get over the mental illness. But there's a lack of family support, and most of the time they leave it up to the police.
Okay. So Sheena, you wanted to comment on that? I see you nodding away there.
Yes, because I'm really excited about the fact that we are having this discussion. We are coming from different angles. There is media, there is the police force, there is psychology. We are having this discussion because I believe it is time that we break the stigma that is attached to the whole concept of mental health. We are going through things. We are coming from a culture that says, boy, your business mustn't be aired in public. Don't talk. You must rest heavily on privacy, keep your business to yourself, that kind of a thing. And when we walk with that principle and we continue on with that principle, you find that a lot of us are suffering in silence because we are afraid to speak about our issues because somebody might say it. We are even afraid to speak to our very own family members and relatives about whatever it is that we're going through because we don't want to be seen as mad and we don't want to be seen as breaking away from tradition. So it's really good that we are having this discussion to allow persons to understand that your mental health is very important. If you don't take care of your mental health intentionally, just as Doc was explaining, just a deliberate action, if you don't do that, then you run the risk of allowing the stressors or the factors to overwhelm you to the point where you are now unable to function. And when you are unable to function and function effectively, you do yourself an injustice and you also do your society an injustice. So we want persons to understand that we are stepping into the modern frontier 2022 and beyond with a renewed understanding that mental health is something that we must talk about. It is something that is not to be ashamed of. It is something that is not to be hid. It's something that we can all just freely talk about without judgment because we all are facing issues, aka the pandemic, and we all need somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And okay, go ahead. I want to Charles on the matter. But
I know sometimes people hesitate to go to a counselor because they think if they go to a counselor, what they say may be out on the public. But I like to say to people that my license is on the line, and I'm not going to lose my license by breaking confidentiality. So, I know that, for example, at SGU, we're almost all licensed, be it in New York or Texas or wherever, we're licensed psychologists. So if someone thinks that they came to see us, or like a student came to see us, and then that person believes that I said something that they said in therapy, they can contact the licensing board, and you lose your license.
Okay.
Why would I want to do that?
Yeah,
so just so that people know that in the profession that we have, confidentiality is key. It's part of our ethical guideline. You cannot divulge, except, as we said, if you said you're going to hurt yourself or hurt someone else.
Great. ASP Charles, I was going to ask you, so Sheena pointed out the fact that, we've been through the pandemic, and we as members of the public are quick to jump on the police for their failings. But I think you need to remind us probably that you, as you said, you're human beings. Men are human beings, and the police are officers. They've been through COVID. I understand you had a large number of police officers who suffered through COVID. They contracted COVID-19. The virus impacted the force, and sometimes we need to strike that balance. This policeman as a human being, but this policeman that must serve us. And probably you want to speak to that?
Well, one of the things that we tell our officers is that yes, we are human beings. We have feelings. And however, because of the job that we do, we have to at times act at a level a little above that. In other words, we cannot do things or react the way the ordinary citizen will react. As law enforcement, we have act at a level above that. And so it's a lot of pressure on officers to exercise restraint in the face of adversity. It's a lot of restraint. Yeah.
And as you say, restraint in adversity, I was thinking we'd get to this a little later, but there was an episode in St. George. We saw the video making the wrongs on social media. And I think we could go to that so that you can illustrate the point that you're trying to make. To ask questions, and I asked the producer if he could. There we have it. We see a student, as we say, sizing up the police. And the police apparently trying to exercise some restraint. Another police officer joins the fracas in trying to get the situation under control. And he's thrusting his chest at the police. Slapping the police. Ooh. And we have a third officer who joins, and we're wondering, well, what is really happening here? And people are making comments about how they think this situation should be brought under control. So as you look at that, ASP Charles, you just made a very salient point that they must respond professionally, but still they have to be humane in the way they treat with situations. That some people may ask, well, 3 police officers, why they didn't just scruff him up and probably give him some baton? That's what some people have been saying. I heard it on the insert.
Yeah. Well, even as the clip rolled out, you'll have heard a person saying, oh, beat him, or whatever. But as law enforcement, we don't operate, or we should not operate in that manner, right? There are degrees of force, right, that have to be used based on the situation that exists. And if as a police officer, you use excessive force not warranted for the situation, then you can be held responsible for your action. So, in the face of the adversity, as a police officer, being human, you have to exercise that restraint. You have to control your emotions. You have to control your temper and ensure that the level of force that you are putting out doesn't go above what is required in the given situation. It's a tough job.
Because I'm thinking, what does the police do in a situation like that? Because obviously they try to hold on to his hands and so, but he's there carrying on at that rate. What's the protocol? What does the police do?
Well, first of all, the officers should try and at least restrain the individual, right? Using as minimum force as possible, right? But at the same time, they need to protect themselves, okay, from being hurt or being injured in any given situation.
I mean, this brings me back, or brought back, terrible memories of, I believe it was the first time that a police officer was killed in Grenada, when you had the stabbing of the guy from Vendome. Thomas. That just brought back all the flashbacks from so many years ago.
Yeah, because in a situation like that, the student is sizing up the officer. He doesn't know if he has a, he doesn't know what he has. He doesn't know who is standing by in support of him, and crucial situation that you have to pay a lot of attention. You have to, be careful what you do. And then nowadays we have social media. Everything that you do is out on social media, and so sometimes even what is being put out on social media is not even the start of the altercation. So sometimes people only see that level where the police may have used force, or where the person may be attacking the police, but the initial stages of the altercation, that has not, most of them is not being captured.
All right, and that sparked a thought process in my mind, and I want Sashina and Dr. Roger to probably, I'm wondering if this youngster, having been for 2 years, locked up, can't go to school. He's out there now, and he's he's in his teenage years, hormones acting, and probably he has some home issues we don't know. I don't Do you think that's a mental health issue that we need to flag? Not that we're saying he's crazy, but now for us to become conscious and when we're dealing with this, to think this is somebody who needs some counseling, some therapy. What are your thoughts here?
And the fact that you could get into a situation like that, where you come up against the police or someone else, and you're not able to control your emotion, means that you lack a particular skill. The fact that you lack a skill doesn't mean you're crazy, but at the same time, what it means is that the onus is on the person to be able to develop the skills. Now, when you think about, we were locked down for almost like 2 years. Social skills, that's fundamental to human interaction, to human life. So if you haven't had that, and remember, many people are at home, and sometimes even being at home, again, not many people, I think, would have like a 5-bedroom house with a large living room to have space where you're not on top of one another. That will have an impact on you. So when these, whether it is students or people who are we were locked down for a while, when we go out, if we hadn't been using the skills, then of course it's going to be difficult to all of a sudden pick it up again. But there's a fundamental thing. Human beings, our brain, we have a survival brain. And when you get into a situation where you think you're being attacked, the brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze. You're trying to protect yourself. I mean, if you see a car barreling down at you, sometimes the person can't move because they're frozen, or you dash out of the road because that is flight. So in a situation like that, you say something and you could feel it in your body. The brain receives a message. You feel tingling in your skin, as we say, the blood fly up into your head, and there is reaction. And that's where, from the very beginning, if you start teaching little ones how to be able to be mindful. What are you feeling? Use your words, not your fist. Then the abuse we have, the verbal abuse, physical abuse, that would be lessened if we start from sports. To be able to give them those skills to be able to say what they're feeling, like I'm angry, or who knows if the young man, what he was carrying. When I say that, I mean in his heart. What he has been through the day. Did something upset him before? I don't know. Was he triggered by something that happened? We don't know. But this is something that we have to be aware of. Things trigger us. Do we have the skills to be able to regulate our emotions, to control ourselves? So
Sheena, as we look at this issue, I'm certain you saw the footage there. I'm thinking about the parents who was confronted with this this piece of news today about this student's behavior, and Dr. Roger was talking about triggers and probably things going on in that young man's life. That what are your thoughts on, what are some of the things that you're dissecting in your brain now concerning that?
So when it comes on to how it is that we operate from a mental perspective, it's a connection. It's a connection between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So if we think a particular way, it is going to influence how it is that we feel, which is now going to have an impact or directive on how it is that we act within a particular situation. Now, the argument started with the question, could COVID itself and the effects of it be a result as to why it is that this young man is behaving this particular way? Yes, it is. But yes, it could be. But what I want us to do is to pan out a little bit and say, okay, we have COVID as an option here, but this could be something that would happen on any given day before a pandemic or long after a pandemic. When we operate within our thoughts and our emotions and our actions, it pretty much gives us an idea of how it is that you are able to function on a daily basis. When I see a clip like this as a psychologist, it says to me that there is something that is fundamentally wrong. And as Doc was saying, it could be that the emotions that this young man is going through is not being handled properly. It could be that he felt threatened by the authority of the officer, and based on what he thought was the action of the officer, it evoked a particular emotion in him that now allowed him to behave or retaliate in an aggressive way. This is something that we need to talk about. It's not necessarily mental illness as we know it, but this is a classical example of something that can happen, a stressor or a factor that can happen to any one of us to allow us to behave outside of how we would normally behave. We don't know if there is something going on in the home. We don't know if it's something that is going on in school. We don't know if it is that his social skills have been parked for so long that he doesn't necessarily remember how it is that he ought to behave. As his parents might be looking at the clip and saying, but I don't understand what is happening with my child, because normally he's well behaved, he's well mannered. I don't know where this is coming from. And that can also point to the fact that we don't necessarily talk about what it is that is bothering us. It would be interesting to hear the perspective of his teachers. What kind of individual or what kind of characteristic does this individual have? Is he acting in the way that he normally would, which means that, all right, there is something that has been lingering, or is he now acting outside of his character, what we are used to, and it means that this stressor is something that is immediately affecting him. But when we look at it, it's something that is saying to us, stressors are factors in our life. As simple as it may seem, what happened this morning, my interaction with so-and-so, can cause us to think a particular way that is different or opposite to how we would normally think, which would now affect our emotions and then automatically play out in our actions.
Useful dissection of a pertinent issue as it played out on the streets of St. George today, and we will continue to explore those issues in depth. We're having a national conversation on mental illness, a national dilemma. This is Beyond the Headlines. We'll take a commercial break and we'll be right back. When we come back, we're going back to St. Dominic's Roman Catholic School, where there was a very frightening experience for the teachers and the students with a man who was believed to have been mentally challenged, going onto the school compound armed with a cutlass and issuing threats. When we come back, we'll revisit that report and we'll continue our discussion with our expert panel. Stay with us.
The Nawasa app brings the power of Nawasa's customer service experience to you. Instant, conversational, and smart. Easy access anywhere. Get bill balance, transaction history for up to 6 months, report a fault, link to websites, view payment centers, contact information, push notifications, and multi-tenant accounts, all in a secure login platform. Like a self-service concierge app, mobile.nawasa.gd gets you the support you need much faster. Available on both Android and iOS platforms. Mobile.nawasa.gd, your customer support companion. Nawasa, committed to meeting customers' needs.
We support you at every stage of your life.
For business,
for your education,
for your financial freedom,
for that new ride.
Upgrade your life with the Communal. Contact us today.
time again at Nirvana Detox Center and Natural Health Store. Check out our many detox packages starting from $100 or get 15% off on colonic irrigation therapy. Detoxing can help with liver and blood cleansing, weight loss, constipation, acid reflux, kidney stones, heavy metal removal, gas and bloating, and more. Call or WhatsApp us on 231-6642, 418-7115, or 449-7753. Ask about our delivery options. Visit us now. Bruce Street Mall, store number 1208, or Belmont St. George's, close to the Fall Edge area. Our opening hours are Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Nirvana Detox Center and Natural Health Store. Detox your way to health. These specials ends on March 31st or while stocks last.
Just a reminder, the global pandemic is not over. Office Pros and markers are still here to protect you. Available are several versions of touchless hand sanitizer and hand soap dispensers, dispenser stands, paper towel and toilet paper dispensers, and thermometers. Also available, hand sanitizing gel, sanitizing solution, hand soap, Lysol products, face masks, and gloves offered at the best price in the market and backed by a full warranty and protection plan with free installation. We are located on the Woodlands Main Road. Call Office Pros on 444-2393 or markers on 439-2393. You can also visit the Facebook page for more information. And never forget to remember, I, Mr. Markers, would never forsake you. Believe that.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Here is a little known fact. There is only one place in Grenada that you can get an MRI scan done. That place is Spicile Imaging Center. Yes, Grenada, that's the truth. Other centers could offer you other scans, but Spicile Imaging provides an authentic MRI scan. Here's another little known fact. Spicile Imaging has 3 centers. We operate at Grenville, the Carnage, and at the Ocean House, Grandlands. We provide the widest range of laboratory tests and services. CT scans, x-rays, mammograms, ultrasounds, and a host of other services. We are fully staffed by a team of family doctors and specialists. Call us today at 444-7679. or 406-1500, or visit any of our 3 locations. Spicile Imaging, from seeing the doctor to getting lab tests, scans, and pharmacy services. We are here to take care of you.
Imagine having the home of your dreams. Imagine investing in that piece of property you can call your own. Imagine finally doing that home improvement project you've always been thinking about. It's time to stop imagining and start doing. Let the GUT Credit Union help you take the first step with fantastic rates, affordable repayments, and reduced legal fees. Make the move. Get better terms on your mortgage. Use your home equity to make those dreams a reality. Act now. There's really no place like home. GUT Credit Union. It's where you belong.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening we're looking at mental illness, a national dilemma. We're having a national conversation this evening with Dr. Cecilia Roger. She's a licensed counseling psychologist and the director of Psychological Services Center, St. George's University. Out of Kingston, Jamaica, we have Sastrina White. She's a licensed associate counseling psychologist. And we have from the Royal Grenada Police Force, ASP Glenn Charles. He's the officer in charge of the Southern Policing District. Some very intriguing and interesting points have come out thus far, and we'd like you to join the conversation as well. You can call us at 440-1252. We'll open the lines at about 9 o'clock so that you can chime in, because we realize people are very keen on this subject. Some disturbing developments in recent times. Recently we had a report out of the St. Dominic's Roman Catholic School. Let's look back at that.
Grade 1 students of the St. Dominic's RC School were left traumatized on Thursday after they were allegedly attacked by a mentally challenged person while in class. The man, who is a well-known resident of the area, was seen walking on the school compound wielding a cutlass, which he allegedly used to try to enter a grade 1 class filled with students, leaving cuts on the classroom door. While explaining to GBN what occurred on Thursday morning, Nicole Kimbridge, an executive member of the school's Parent-Teacher Association and parent, said the issue of security at the school must be addressed as soon as possible, as this incident could have ended badly.
So yesterday, a mentally challenged individual came to the school with a cutlass and was chopping the door of a grade 1 class while there were students and the teacher in the classroom. The teacher actually had to push back the door so as the individual would not enter into the class. This is not the first time a mentally challenged individual came onto the school compound, and as a parent, I'm calling on the relevant authorities to at least provide security at the school.
The school is only partially fenced and can be accessed by anyone at any time. The PTA is now brainstorming on how this can be fixed and is seeking the assistance of the general public and government.
So I'm pleading to the relevant authorities, to assist us. And as part of the executive of the PTA, I had requested from the principal a revised estimate as to how much it will cost to fence the school, and we are waiting that, and then we will take the next steps in terms of raising funds to get it done. But any assistance donations will be really appreciated. It is a matter that needs urgent attention.
On Friday morning, counselors were at the school to speak to students and teachers who were affected by the attack. Only 12 of the 32 students of the classroom that was attacked were present for Friday morning's counseling session. The other 20 were reportedly too traumatized to enter the school compound. This mother, who preferred to remain off camera, said her 7-year-old son will not be physically attending school for a while as he is still devastated.
So you say, Mommy, I told the teachers that everybody would have died yesterday. See, chopping up the door and chopping. So I thought I'd tell him, the only thing he could do right now is just calm down and relax himself. And that's what he's doing. And he's still shaking on it, he's still studying about it. Right now, he asks me, Mommy, you're going here, when you're coming back? And he started locking up. So this is thing what go take a long while for a child to get over. I'm just going to keep him home for some days and just try to calm down.
Minister for Education Emmeline Pearce said her ministry is aware.
The Ministry of Education has been working aggressively with Ministry of Works on a number of schools throughout the island, including the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Those include not just repairs but also fencing, but we have been doing so in order of priority based on the state after the assessment of every school on island. And so this particular school is now at the stage of conducting the assessment for the scope of works to be developed for the start of a general repair of that school. So within that general scope of works will be included the fencing of that facility. So they are down for that support. We are going to have conversation with the Catholic Church to see see what additional support can be provided in addition to what government is doing. So we are going to have conversation with the church as well.
The mentally challenged individual was apprehended on Friday morning by members of the Royal Grenada Police Force. For GBN News, I am Rena Pett Thomas.
Somebody said in response to seeing this footage again, saying that just seeing the man walking onto the compound with the cutlass and shivers up their spine, so they could imagine how traumatizing it was for the students.
Well, of course, it would be a very traumatic experience, and so the children are having a very normal response to the trauma, which is almost like we say post-traumatic syndrome, where he's hypervigilant, he wants to close the door, he wants his mom near to him because of the trauma that he suffered. So the mom has to be consistent now in being there for him, assuring him that he's safe, even though home you're safe, so that he could start developing again to trust the environment that he came from. But what grade 1, the poor things, they would be traumatized by what happened. So parents would have to be very supportive of these little ones and the teachers who are there as well. Because we not only have now we have these things happening here, but remember, they've also been watching TV and they hear about stuff like that happening in other parts of the world. So when it happens to them, it would have a very powerful impact. So all the assurance and the support that the mother can give would be very important for those little ones and the teachers as well.
So, Shana, we heard in the report that only 12 of the 32 students attended classes the following day. That's reflective of what?
That is reflective of a sense of safety and security that was being offered by the school. It has now been breached. You've now been put in a position where the place of learning, the place of education, the place that you were able to run free and just feel a sense of safety and security has now been breached and is now a place of trauma and fear. And of course, the children would not feel comfortable going back into that environment without a sense of assurance that it is safe to do so. It also brings into focus the concern of not just the children or the students, but also the parents as well, because there is also secondary trauma that is being established when a parent or parents hear that their child or children have experienced something as traumatic as that. So we have the children's trauma to look at, to try and understand and work through, but we also have the trauma of the parents and the teachers within that environment to say, okay, how can we now restore this place to a place where there is a sense of safety, a sense where we can say it is okay for you to feel relaxed to learn in this environment.
If I may say something, I think one of the things parents need to look out for as well is some behaviors they may see in the children now that perhaps they would have attributed, for example, when they were younger. So if a first grader all of a sudden started wetting the bed, or they're not eating, they're having nightmares, not to go like, what's wrong with you? You know, to understand that the trauma could be having such an impact on them. So not to cause another set of trauma by being harsh with them, but understanding that this could be manifesting in that way.
Okay. Yeah, speech Charles, one parent kind of hollered, what? He do that Thursday, the police arrest him Friday?
I know. I don't know what is the reason for the delay in the arrest, so I can't advance any reason for it, whether or not they couldn't have located him or it's just a delay in response. I don't know what it was, so I wouldn't go and comment on that, but I'm glad that the police did at least responded, albeit a couple hours after the next day, and was able to take the person into custody and bring them for treatment. One of the things that we can do from the law enforcement perspective is to show some level of support to the school. But again, that has to be carefully thought out because you have some children that is afraid of police officers in uniform, whereas you have some that's going to embrace police officers in uniform. So that has to be, discussed with the management of the school and see whether or not, they can allow the officers to come in a 2 hours a day, just to mingle with the students to give them a sense of security. But that has to be weighed against the students that is afraid
of the police.
Okay, it happens.
Okay. So I have to say that a lot of times on Beyond Headlines we start discussing a subject matter and I might have had a particular frame of mind, but it gets changed. And I have to say that I have this evolving sense of mental illness because prior to all that you said tonight, I might have said, well, oh, that's a wicked man and they should beat up the man or something, but you have made me know, you've caused me to rethink this whole thing and say, okay, this is somebody in need of help. So how do you balance that? Somebody who is seen as a terrorist because he terrorized those students and the teachers, but no, this is somebody we know that needs help. How do you balance that?
Well, I'm the psychologist, so I'm concerned about his mental health. It's like getting treatment for the person. And, while we were talking earlier, I made the point that sometimes people self-medicate. So we may see a particular behavior and say, oh, that person is out of his or her mind. It may have started with that person being anxious or depressed. And to self-soothe, they start using alcohol or they start using marijuana or the drugs. Now, sometimes, again, when you use those substances in a way that is not controlled, it has an impact on your brain. So it could have started not as the person, again, the person could have been if you want to say genetically have a problem and be mentally ill. But it also could be environmental, it could be contributed to substances. So we have to look at what is the problem. What about his background? Is there mentally ill people in his family? He may be that genetically he is somebody who is prone to mental illness. So from a psychological standpoint, I think of the care. I guess the officer would talk about the law and deal with that.
Yes, when it comes to mentally ill persons, there's no one size fit all glove. Right? Every situation is unique to itself. And most of the time, you'll hear people respond, oh, if I was the police, I'll go there and I'll beat him up. I'll give him some good licks. But that individual is a human being and must be treated with dignity. And that's the line that the police has to always be mindful of when dealing with mentally ill persons, that they are human beings and they have to be treated with dignity. And it's important that we give the support that we give to ensure that they get treatment for their illness.
And while we add,
if I may also add,
go ahead, Sashina.
Right, I didn't want to miss this point. I also want to add that there is always a backstory to the story that is presented. And a situation like this brings into focus the fact that we have to treat with understanding mental health and mental illnesses because it is a snowballing kind of effect. So let's say if we step back to this man's story, whatever it is, if family members and supporting system understood mental illness and started to operate in that knowledge and that understanding in a particular way, then chances are he might have been somewhere else, might have been in treatment or continued treatment that would not have caused him to unleash that onslaught on the particular school and create now traumatic situations with different family settings that we now have to rectify. So I just wanted to highlight that to bring to the forefront the importance of dealing with understanding and treating with mental health and mental health issues and even stressors before they evolve into mental health, mental illness, so that we are protecting not just ourselves but also other other individuals who might be, the recipients of something like what happened with this gentleman. What's his story? And at the end of the clip pointed out that, he was taken into police custody. And I'm listening to hear, okay, and then what? How is he now treated with as somebody who is experiencing a mental breakdown?
ASP Charles, you were talking to us during the commercial break about the fact that you do a lot of service that you don't get credit for, and the public is not aware of, where you take some people in to get their care. You want to elaborate on that?
Well, every report that we receive, right, our level of response is to attend to the report, take the individual into custody, and bring them to seek medical attention, where they will be examined by a doctor. And if the doctor, based on his findings, sends the person over to the institution at Mongi, then we deliver those persons to the institution. But we have had instances where persons report mental illness, and we would respond, take the persons to seek medical attention, and the doctor in his finding will say the person is not mentally ill. And it goes back to family support, right? Sometimes it's something that's aggravating the individual at home, so he acts up. And what we realize, and I've realized in our society, that people do not cherish, most families don't cherish the mentally ill. They sort of push them aside. And we've seen that happen over and over again. And so a lot of repeated cases, not because the person is so mentally ill, but because they doesn't have the support from the family, that they will tend to trip or to a sort of behavioral pattern that is unwarranted. And sometimes there are cases where we bring persons to the doctor for examination, the doctor sends them back home.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. I wanted to touch a little later on why it is that, continuing on the point that you were making, that sometimes we just see, let's just say we think that all mentally ill people end up on the streets, and I guess it's because of the lack of support. But you were making a point to us to how we treat with them. And let's go to this another report where we saw 2 youngsters ill-treating somebody who we believe is known in a community to suffer from mental health issues. Let's take that. And then
a video making its rounds on social media shows a mentally ill man being viciously attacked by 2 teenagers, one of whom is a student of one secondary school in St. Andrew. Officer in charge of the Community Relations Department, Assistant Superintendent Desmond Richards, says he is saddened by these acts of violence that appear to be quite prevalent.
Coming to the point with the video that has surfaced on Tuesday with these 2 young men in the area of Pleasance in St. Andrews, beaten, horribly so, this mentally ill. And I want to stress this: it's a mentally ill patient that has been beaten, that has been planus, that is treated in this way. This is very touching. I looked at it and thought, what if it was my own father? And I hope the young man is sitting down now and thought, what if it was my father that was mentally ill? And even if he did something wrong, or allegedly did something wrong in your view, understand this: he's not a normal person as the rest of us. He has a challenge and he needs help. He doesn't need to be brutalized and abused and beaten in this manner.
The 2 boys are being questioned by police.
The 2 young men were detained. Of course, you'll notice from the age, they are minors. So they were detained, they were questioned. All the necessary information were gathered. The investigation is still continuing. And I believe in my last communication, we are now awaiting the medical form so that we can adequately know what it is to charge for. Because you have to wait for that form to come back, so the doctor will pen whether it's dangerous harm, causing harm, whatever he would, and then we proceed further.
This matter and those of that nature, the RGPF promises to not treat lightly. The ASP says they are working with stakeholders to curb these acts of violence in society. The ASP implores people to show a bit more empathy and to think before taking certain actions.
Police force, we will leave no stone unturned to ensure that matters as these are investigated and investigated thoroughly and justice is served. We want to assure the public that, notwithstanding what it may look like, we are developing mechanisms, developing strategies to deal with them, and we will deal with them with the help, of course. When something is happening, as bad as it might be, as terrible as it might look, person seems to take joy in videoing, in taking pictures, and sometimes even while they're on the same scene, sending out these pictures to social media, not understanding the impact it can have. Now,
meanwhile, in a separate incident, another video that went viral showed a young man carrying a weapon during the St. Joseph's Convent Sport Day on Thursday. The officer also spoke on that incident.
The police attended to that matter. However, when they got to the stadium, the athletic stadium, they did not meet any fight, any altercation at all. But a cutlass was handed to them, taken from one of the persons that we believe were part of the altercation, and but no names were given, no formal report was made.
No one was hurt, and the officer thanked persons who got involved before it escalated into something more serious. Christelina John, GBN News.
There are times when I become speechless. So, Cecilia, while I regain my composure, guide us.
What keeps coming up to me is what in our society would cause young men to think that is okay? How did they learn that? Appreciation, a lack of respect for people who are deemed not to be normal, and whether it is people who are physically challenged, mentally challenged, cognitively challenged, I don't know as a society if we have really come to grasp that people who have those challenges, they are persons whose dignity has to be respected as well.
So Sheena, I'm coming to you before I go to ASP Charles. Your thoughts there?
Wow, that is really heartbreaking, because it shows that how we see somebody who is faced with a challenge is almost in the light of less than a person. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, in terms of age, this man is an elder compared to the two young boys. This is an individual who is vulnerable in comparison to the two young boys. And because of how it is that, I don't know where the thought process would have come from, but I don't know if it's attached to stigma, but, is it that because of the stigma that is attached to mental illness and how it is that we ought to see and treat with persons who are having mental health challenges, that gives an okay for them to be treated in the way that this gentleman was. And this is something that has happened, but it's something that needs to wake us up as a people, wake us up as a region to say, hey, how are we doing in terms of respect for somebody who we might consider to be in a condition that is in need of help, a condition that is, or a state that is vulnerable. That video speaks volumes.
I have an indication that we have our first caller for the evening. Caller, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. I have a deep concern about the people that go to the mental hospitals, women especially, and you hear about some of them being raped up there by the workers. Even last night I was talking to an elderly lady that used to work at the mental hospital in the 60s, and she said that some of them need to put the young ladies in seclusion and go and rape them. They have sex with the female patients. We're not hearing anything about all these things, and she said it continues to happen. So we just look at the video where the two young men was beating up the what's happening when we put our people in the mental hospital to be taken care of. And sometimes they come out, they're pregnant, sometimes all sorts of things happen to them up there. And we're not hearing about that. So not only the young men that need to be counseled and taught, but even some of the workers in the mental hospital need to be dealt with also. Because it started with me last night. She was giving me reports and reports that things she saw when she was working there, and things she encountered. And she said that it continues to happen to our young ladies whenever they're sick and they go up there. The young men up there, the workers, the nurses that should be taking care of them, they are having sexual intercourse with them and abusing them also. So I need these things to be taken into consideration and really find out what is going on up there.
There was an issue recently, and the Minister for Hospital Services, Derma Thomas, she spoke about, there was a particular case and said that investigations were ongoing. Thank you for that interjection there, caller. The number that you can call to participate in the discussion this evening, 440-1252. And I have a little lengthy contribution made by someone following us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I would crave our indulgence so that I can share this because the person took the time to respond. The person says, mental illness in our society is not given enough attention and not discussed enough openly. Also, people and their family members are afraid to admit mental illness. As is the case, only when something serious happens we talk about it, but this illness is with us and ignored too many times. Accepting it for what it is will get more people opening up about it. I had an experience with a dad who comes to school about his child, and he would always be breathing heavily and speaking loudly. And one day he even wanted to beat the child in front of me as the principal. I told him to calm down and let's talk about why he is behaving like that. And it is better to talk to your child when you get home. He calmed down. Breathing went to normal, and then we talked some more, and eventually he told me he has mental issues. That's why he gets into a rage so easily. The problem in our small community is very difficult to get help with these issues. Everything changed after his admittance. He was much more calm, and he no longer abuses the child. There is someone in the community who he told about his problem, and they spoke with him from time to time. Mental illness is real. It can happen to any one of us. Yeah? And I'm told we have another caller. Caller, good evening. Oops. We apologize if we took too long to get to you. You can feel free to call back. 440-1252. 440-1252. We're discussing mental illness. It's a national dilemma. And I think you said sometime earlier, ASP Charles, that there are times when you will take mentally ill persons to get their meds, but we understand the caller is back. Caller, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We're hearing you. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. Very good program.
Yes, go ahead. We're hearing you.
Caller,
hold on. Hold it there. You have something playing in the background, so we're getting a feedback. You need to fix that and then come back and talk to us because we're getting the reverberation in the studio.
Okay, I took it off. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, very good program. For a long time I've been thinking about that. There is cases where the police go and shoot the mentally ill people too. This is something we have to address. They have to be trained. No matter if they damage people, they kill people, the police should be able to handle them without killing them. He had a lot of cases like that here, so I want us to address that, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. ASP Charles, the ball is in your court.
What I would say is that someone losing their life at the hand of or the actions of a police officer is not always nice, right? One has to judge every situation on its own merit, or what would have transpired, right? De-escalation is very important in dealing with mental health persons, mentally ill persons. However, there are times when persons would exhibit extreme violent conduct, and There are times when a number of police officers would have gotten injured by mentally ill persons. We believe that having to use that level of force should be one of the last resorts, right? And anytime a life is lost, obviously there will be an investigation to see whether or not the level of force used was suited, whether the person was protecting themselves or protecting another from a violent attack. So in not every case that a mentally ill person got shot by the hands of a police officer, you say that, oh, the police should not have done so. You have to look at the particular situation, analyze it, and see whether or not the force used was justified. And that's the bottom line of it. But it's not nice when anybody would have lost their life in such a situation.
Okay. We have another caller. Caller, good evening and welcome.
Hi, good night. I watched the program earlier on, and I saw it all on the phone. I think the police on them should dig bigger into what's happening with the 2-year guy that beat up that mental man. It's very disturbing that people worldwide seeing this, and they will think about Grenada differently. So I think the police and them, no matter they are minors, they should go further on with that to show others example. Don't ill-treat mentally people like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you said that the matter is under investigation.
Yes, that particular matter is under investigation, and I'm confident that at the end of the investigation, based on what plays out, charges will be laid in regards to that situation.
All right, and as we get ready to wrap it up this evening, we have Sashina White out of Jamaica, Dr. Cecilia Roger, based right here in Grenada, a daughter of the soil, and we have ASP Charles of the Southern Policing District. As we get ready to wrap it up, why is it important to normalize seeking care for mental health illnesses?
Then people won't be afraid to go get help. Because, as we were talking, I thought to myself, there are people who go to the gym. They're not, you look at them and they're physically fit, but they know in terms of preventing any kind of illness or just keeping healthy, they have to practice something that is good for them. And that is why we need to do the same thing with mental health. You do the things that help you to maintain good mental health. If you recognize that you are in danger of sliding into something that may be termed mental illness, or you have some stresses that you cannot cope with on your own, you go find help. And your family, which should encourage you. If they can't help you themselves, at least they'll be able to say, well, we have these resources in the community that you can access. So to get rid of the stigma, we have to normalize it. Other than that, people won't get help, and we'll have incidents like what we saw on the clips.
And Sashina, as we look for solutions, you're one of the people who, you're big on creative arts, and I believe you apply creative arts in helping people overcome mental health challenges?
Yes, absolutely. When it comes on to mental health, part of the stigma that is attached to it is the way mental health looks and feels. When we talk about mental health or illness, it's always, dreary colors. Your therapist wears black suits and big glasses, or, you're thinking about needles and straps in your arms, and just things that we have evolved out of over the past 20, 30, 40 years at least. And so, as somebody who is multidimensional and multifaceted, creative in different aspects of life, I wanted to apply that creativity within the mental health sphere to get persons to understand that mental health is something that you can fall in love with, something that you don't necessarily have to be ashamed to talk about, because it is beautiful. So when I do mental health activities, it's always fun, it is always with bright colors, because we want persons to understand that the mind is beautiful, the mind is your most valuable asset, and you really should take an intentional and deliberate action in fiercely protecting it. So a part of not just the delivery of therapy and the delivery of mental health workshops and that creative side, I've also created a mental health planner that is called Mind Priority. And it's a beautiful, enriching planner because it's rather colorful, that will help you to understand that just as how you journal, just as how you plan a vacation, just as how you plan your to-do list to execute a goal, you can do that exact same thing when it comes down to your mental health without feeling, oh my gosh, if I think about doing something stress less, it means that I'm losing my mind. So my planner is out there for individuals to understand that, mental health is something that you can engage in from the get-go. You can be a part of your own mental health journey so that you're able to track your mood and how it is that you are feeling. So, participating in it, engaging in the different creative aspects is with the mindset that once we are all excited about it, we will all fall in love with it. And once we are falling in love with it, we will take deliberate and intentional actions to do it, and do it loud and proud, so that we can inspire others to take care of their mental health as well.
Loud and proud. Cecilia?
What do we do?
Loud and proud.
Loud and proud. Well, it just tells me that you're going to be intentional. It's part of who you are. So it's not as if there is something that you have to hide. Even if you're going through a stressful day or you're sad, or to be able to say that to the people who are close with you, to be able to ask for support. I need a hug today, or I'm feeling a little bit today, probably let's go for a walk, or to be able to do that without having to make any excuses or being ashamed of it. So I agree with Sashina, to be loud and proud about it. In other words, speak your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Around it.
Absolutely.
Speak your truth. And SP, as we get ready to wrap it up this evening, you have enlightened the public on your protocols and how you handle this situation, and it's not probably as we thought prior to coming to this program. What would you like to say to the public as you seek and enroll their assistance in dealing with this issue?
Well, what I would like to say to the general public is that they must get involved in the mental health issues of the family members, right? Most of the time when the police would respond to calls, we got little or no assistance from family members. Wow. And so it's left up to the police. Mm-hmm. But mentally challenged persons are human beings, and we have had instances where persons is going to come to us and say, officer, I need to get my medication. Can you assist me? Right? You have others that will stay away from the medication, and when they becomes overwhelmed, then we have to go in and deal with those. But we have been doing a lot in terms of mentally challenged persons. We have been developing protocols in terms of mapping mental health persons in terms of their location, their contact numbers, and so on. We also are engaged with partnering with the mental health nurses for the various districts in going out with them to assist in giving medications to persons who medication is due and they're not coming to receive the medication. And what is happening is that a lot of our resources, human resource and vehicular resources, are tied up sometimes for a greater part of a day, just dealing with mentally challenged persons. And what we are saying to persons, if family members are going to look out after the interests of those persons, ensure that they get a meal on time, ensure that the medication is being taken on time, a lot of these strain on the resources of the RGPF could be reduced. Nevertheless, we continue to deal with those reports. We continue to follow up with them. At the end of the day, it's a human being, it's a life, and we want to ensure that they receive the medical treatment that they so deserve.
He said a meal on time, and that made me smile, because when I get hungry, I get irritable. So I never. Hungry. Yeah, so I guess family members need to think about that. You know, if you probably give them a meal, it will keep them quiet. Yeah. So she is laughing at me. She thinks I'm crazy because when I get hungry, I get crazy. So she know why you're laughing at me now.
No, but you're actually right. You know, so in Jamaica we have a saying that says a hungry man is a hungry man. So sometimes that might very well be the issue.
So Doc, as we wrap it up this evening, your closing words to Grenada.
I'd like to encourage people to normalize, to let people know that, as Sashina said, everybody has a mind. We all have stresses in life, and there is no shame in seeking help, whether it is from someone externally or within your own family, to be able to make it normal to talk about what is happening to you today. How are you doing? And if we do that at home and we listen to each other, and you realize that if somebody is in a state that you can't help them, but you're able to find help for them, then we wouldn't get into some of the situations that we're getting into. We all have a mind. Let's take care of our mind.
We all have a mind. Let's take care of our mind. I think that's a poignant note on which we can end tonight's program. I'm so pleased that we have been able to engage in this conversation, mental illness and national dilemma. We found some answers, we found some explanations, and we've also had some promises that people who misbehave or people who need attention will get the attention. Those two youngsters that we saw, I had to look away. I could not, tonight is the first time probably that I had to look at it in detail because I'm here, but I could not look at that before. And so, Sashina, thank you so much for sparing us the time this evening, all the way from Jamaica. Tell our very good mutual friend, we thank them sincerely for offering you up and you taking the challenge. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you having spent the time with us this evening to explore this issue. Dr. Roger, thank you so much. And we thank St. George's University, as always, for partnering with us, providing us with resource persons. Carrot Clement will forever be grateful to you for always being so willing, able, and willing to help us. ASP Charles, we know you thought you got away because we should have done this 2 weeks ago and last week. So when I called him today, he's like, no, Ms. Campbell, but you know, they know why they sent you. You have played the role exceedingly well, and we thank you sincerely. To all of our viewers and listeners, we thank you for tuning in to this discussion and staying with us, and to all of the production team at the GBN, General McDonald, who really did work behind the scenes to help us pull this off. Joseph Cador, you've been very helpful as well. Thank you so much. Mike Alexis, Darius Slocum, Akim Williams, and to every person who in one way or another contributed. God bless you. We'll see you again next week when we explore another issue, taking it beyond the headlines. Thanks again.
When you need your prescription filled or you require non-prescribed medication, supplements, or all your personal needs, visit Gittins Healthcare at locations on Wall Street, Grandans, Victoria Street, Brandon, and Central Deputy Street, 12. Gittins Healthcare aims to provide an exceptional